Stop being proud of how good you are to women. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the only way to save you from a lifetime of confusion, exhaustion, and quiet humiliation. Men grow up believing that kindness wins love, that patience earns loyalty, that goodness will somehow make them unforgettable. But Machiavelli would laugh at that. He would tell you that a man who tries to be loved by all will be used by all. And he'd be right. Because in this world, especially in the strange arena of male-female dynamics, goodness doesn't protect men, it exposes them. When a man tries to be endlessly kind, endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving, he doesn't look noble, he looks predictable. And in Machiavelli's world, and ours, predictability is the death of respect. Every man who's ever tried to please every woman eventually discovers the same truth. The more you give, the less you're valued. The more you chase peace, the more chaos follows you. It's not because women are cruel, it's because people instinctively test the limits of what they can get away with. The woman you treat like a queen without boundaries will not become your loyal ally. She will become your mirror, reflecting your weakness back at you until you can't stand the sight of yourself. Machiavelli once observed that men should either be caressed or annihilated, meaning that people respond only to power or complete withdrawal, never indecision. But most modern men live stuck in the middle, too afraid to be cruel, too timid to be strong. They think being endlessly good is their shield, but it's actually the knife that keeps cutting them open. Goodness without strategy is not virtue, it's vanity. It's a man saying, "Look at how selfless I am," while secretly hoping that the world will reward him for it. But the world doesn't. The world takes, smiles, and walks away. And every time a man gives without purpose, he chips away at his own authority. You've probably done it too. Apologized when you weren't wrong, comforted someone who disrespected you, stayed in a relationship that drained you because you didn't want to seem heartless. That's not goodness. That's fear wearing a halo. Machiavelli wrote, "The man who becomes master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it may expect to be destroyed by it." Replace the word city with woman, and you'll see the same pattern. If you hand someone unlimited emotional freedom without structure, they'll eventually turn that freedom against you. They'll test your patience until it breaks, not because they want to, but because human nature demands it. Power abhors a vacuum, and when you refuse to take authority in your relationships, someone else, usually her emotions, will. So here's the first painful truth. Being good to all women is not noble. It's naive. It's not the mark of maturity. It's the residue of guilt, the feeling that you must earn affection by suffering for it. You were taught that women reward kindness with love, but in reality, they reward strength with admiration and boundaries with respect. There's a certain look a man gets when he's been too good for too long. You can see it in his eyes, a kind of quiet fatigue that no amount of rest fixes. It's the weariness of someone who's been drained not by work, but by trying to prove his worth through kindness. He's the man who pays for every dinner, who listens to every complaint, who forgives every insult. He believes that if he just keeps being good, eventually the world, and the women in it, will recognize his value. But Machiavelli would tell him otherwise. He'd say that value unguarded becomes a gift for the cunning. When you are good to everyone, you become useful to everyone, and respected by no one. In politics, Machiavelli observed how rulers who showed endless mercy were the first to fall. People mistook their compassion for weakness, their kindness for lack of will. The same law governs your personal life. The more predictable your goodness, the faster it loses its power. A man's kindness is only respected when it feels like a choice, not an obligation. That's the secret most men never learn. When your goodness is endless, it stops being special. It becomes background noise. A woman who never has to earn your affection will start to question its value. She'll test your patience, not because she's cruel, but because she needs to know it still exists. Every time you rush to fix her problems, to calm her storms, to rescue her from consequences, you teach her that your love has no price, and anything without a price will be treated like it's free and disposable. Machiavelli once wrote, Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, covetous. He wasn't condemning humanity. He was describing it. He knew that people, by nature, pursue their advantage, and if you offer your energy freely, without standards, they will take it until you are nothing but an empty shell with a polite smile. This isn't evil, it's instinct. The same way water fills every gap, people flow into the spaces your boundaries should have closed. The painful cost of being good to all women isn't just emotional, it's existential. You start losing your edge, your mystery, your masculine essence. You stop being the man who inspires respect and start becoming the man who's always available, always agreeable, always exhausted. Women might like you, but they won't want you. Because desire isn't born from kindness, it's born from polarity, from the tension between admiration and challenge. Here's the irony. The man who tries to please every woman ends up pleasing none, while the man who pleases himself first commands the loyalty of those around him. Not because he's selfish, but because he radiates something rare, self-respect. So remember this, your goodness should be rare, not routine. It should be earned, not expected. It should elevate, not enslave. Be the man who helps when it's deserved, not demanded. Because when your kindness is strategic, it becomes strength. But when it's constant, it becomes your leash. Machiavelli warned, it is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. And he wasn't talking about cruelty, he was talking about balance. If love costs you respect, it's not love worth keeping. There's a strange moment every man experiences when he finally realizes his kindness has turned him invisible. It doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, hidden behind politeness and small compromises. One day you notice she doesn't listen when you talk. Another day, she cancels plans without guilt. Then she stops saying thank you. And somewhere between your sacrifices and her comfort, you disappear. This is what Machiavelli would call the decay of power through familiarity. When you make your goodness too common, it loses all weight. A favor done every day is no longer a gift. It's an expectation. A compliment repeated endlessly becomes noise. A man who gives without pause becomes background furniture in his own life. He's there, useful, but unremarkable. You see, women don't consciously plan to disrespect a good man. They simply stop feeling his presence. Nature doesn't reward abundance. It rewards scarcity. The sun rises every morning and nobody claps. But let the sky go dark for one day too long, and the world prays for light. That's the paradox of male goodness. The more constant it is, the less it's valued. Machiavelli wrote that the unarmed prophet perishes. Translate that to modern love, and it means this: the unguarded man loses everything. Because being unarmed isn't about lacking weapons, it's about lacking edge. If you don't make your value felt through strength, you'll be seen as a man who serves rather than leads. And no matter what people say, respect doesn't follow servitude, it follows command. Good men often confuse invisibility for humility. They think staying quiet and agreeable makes them noble. But humility without presence isn't virtue, it's erasure. You fade out of your own story while louder, colder, more self-assured men take the stage. And here's the irony. Those men aren't always better. They're just visible. Their energy has boundaries. Their attention has gravity. And that gravity pulls people in, including the very women who once overlooked you. Machiavelli would tell you, appearances rule the world. Not intentions, not morality. Appearances. The man who appears strong will be treated as such, even if he doubts himself. The man who appears too good will be treated like a servant, even if his heart is pure. Because the world doesn't reward sincerity, it rewards projection. If you want your goodness to mean something, it must be paired with presence. You must know when to step back, when to say no, when to let silence do the talking. A man's goodness only holds value when it is felt as a choice, not assumed as a duty. You must remind the world, gently but firmly, that your time, your energy, and your loyalty are limited currencies. Because the truth is simple. Women respect men who make them earn their kindness. They dismiss men who hand it out like free samples. The invisible man believes he's doing everything right. He's supportive, patient, always available. But in doing so, he gives away the one thing that makes goodness powerful: mystery. And once you lose mystery, you lose magnetism. Every man must eventually learn what Machiavelli already knew centuries ago, that goodness, when scattered everywhere, becomes worthless. It's not that kindness itself is wrong, it's that abundance destroys its meaning. Just as too much sunlight burns the crop it's meant to grow, too much goodness suffocates the respect it's meant to earn. Selective goodness, that's the real strength. Knowing when to show mercy and when to let silence do the teaching. Knowing which woman deserves your warmth and which one must feel your absence. This is the art of strategy in relationships. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn how not to be good and to use that knowledge when necessary. He didn't mean cruelty, he meant control. He meant a man must master the art of measured virtue, the power to choose, not the reflex to please. You see, when your kindness is predictable, it stops inspiring gratitude and starts breeding entitlement. But when your kindness is rare, it becomes sacred. The woman who knows your generosity isn't guaranteed will guard it, cherish it, and rise to meet it. The one who thinks it's endless will drain it dry. And that's the tragic irony of many men today. They give until they're empty, thinking love will refill them, but love respects fullness, not depletion. A man's strength doesn't come from what he gives away, it comes from what he guards, his peace, his time, his energy, his standards. The man who guards nothing becomes nothing. Machiavelli would say that mercy without measure invites rebellion. In your life, that rebellion takes the form of disrespect. It's the partner who ignores you, the colleague who dumps work on you, the friend who only calls when she needs something. They don't hate you. They just see you as free labor, emotionally or otherwise. When you stop giving endlessly, at first people will react. They'll call you selfish, cold, changed. But what they're really saying is, you stopped being my emotional servant. Don't let guilt drag you back into the cage of blind goodness. Let discomfort become your teacher. Because on the other side of guilt is power. And when you learn to tolerate that guilt, you finally begin to live on your own terms. Machiavelli believed that the highest form of intelligence is adaptability. A man who adapts his goodness, who knows when to be soft and when to be steel, becomes untouchable. Women feel drawn to that man not because he's nice, but because he's unpredictable in the right ways. His warmth has timing. His affection has weight. His attention feels earned. That's what ignites respect, not endless giving, but earned access. You must stop thinking that good men finish last. Good men who lack discernment finish last. But good men with strategy lead kingdoms, in love, in business, in life. The difference isn't goodness, it's governance. Govern your goodness like a ruler guards his throne. Show mercy as a gesture of power, not as an apology for existing. Because a man's value is not measured by how much he gives. It's measured by how little he allows others to take from him without merit. Every man who's ever loved deeply knows this test, even if he never recognized it for what it was. The woman he adores begins to push. Softly at first, then boldly. She asks more of him, questions his choices, tests his patience. And the good man, eager to prove his devotion, keeps saying yes. He gives her what she wants, even when it cost him peace. He believes love will balance the scales, but Machiavelli would shake his head and say, "You've lost command of your own state, because every relationship is a kingdom, and every kingdom needs a ruler. Not a tyrant, a ruler. When a man's boundaries collapse, chaos takes his place. The woman doesn't consciously want to dominate him. She wants to feel his strength, his presence, the invisible line that reminds her, this is a man who cannot be moved by guilt or fear. When she no longer feels that, she begins to resent him. even as he's doing everything to please her. Machiavelli warned, "The man who builds his power on the love of others builds on sand." Love alone cannot sustain authority. It needs respect as its foundation. Women might say they want a man who's endlessly gentle, endlessly giving, endlessly forgiving, but what they truly crave is certainty, the sense that he will not break, no matter how much she tests him. That's what makes her feel safe. That's what makes her trust his leadership. But most men fail this test. They mistake emotional storms for love, manipulation for closeness, apology for harmony. They keep extending kindness to fix what only firmness can restore. And each time they do, their power erodes. They become anxious, cautious, terrified of conflict. They start measuring their words, their tone, their silence. And before they know it, they've become strangers in their own lives, men built entirely around another person's moods. This is the true cost of being good to all women. You lose the ability to be respected by any. Your love becomes charity. Your attention becomes a drug. And soon, even your absence won't be felt, because you've conditioned everyone to believe your presence is guaranteed. Machiavelli believed that conflict was not to be avoided, but managed. "There is no avoiding war," he wrote. "It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." The same applies to relationships. Every time you avoid confrontation to keep the peace, you delay a necessary reckoning, and it always returns with interest. The resentment builds silently, and the respect quietly dies. So when she tests you, when she challenges your boundaries, understand this. It's not hatred. It's instinct. She's trying to see if your power is real or just performed. And when you finally draw the line, not in anger, but in calm certainty, you awaken something ancient in her. A woman may not always admit it, but she feels safest around a man who won't surrender his principles to please her. To pass the feminine test is not to dominate her. It's to demonstrate self-command, to show that your kindness is voluntary, not automatic, that your love is given, not owed. Because the moment you start living for a woman's approval, you've already lost your crown. A man who tries to please every woman ends up betraying himself, slowly, subtly, without realizing it. He starts to edit his words, soften his opinions, hide his edge. He becomes agreeable, polite, safe, the kind of man who never offends, but never inspires either. The kind of man who women say they like, but never desire. And that's the cruel irony Machiavelli would have mocked. A man who tries to be loved by everyone will be loved by no one, because his love costs nothing. You can see it in the lives of men who built their identities around being good guys. They open doors, send flowers, apologize first, compromise always. They think they're proving their worth through sacrifice, but really they're confessing weakness. And no matter how modern or progressive we pretend society is, nature still obeys its laws. Women don't follow men who apologize for their masculinity. They follow men who stand firmly in it. Machiavelli once wrote, "The man who seeks to be loved will always serve those who do not." In other words, when you crave validation from others, you hand them the power to define your value. Every time you chase approval, you make yourself smaller. Every time you give endlessly, hoping it will buy loyalty, you remind the world that your worth can be rented. The painful cost of being good to all women isn't measured in money or heartbreak. It's measured in identity. You start to lose the part of you that once commanded respect, your conviction, your decisiveness, your edge. You become an actor in your own life, performing niceness while resenting everyone you're nice to. That's why so many good men end up bitter. They weren't born that way. They were molded by years of trying to earn love from those who only respected power. Machiavelli's wisdom was simple. To survive, a man must sometimes disappoint others, not because he's cruel, but because he must protect his position. The ruler who tries to make every subject happy destroys his kingdom. The man who tries to make every woman happy destroys himself. You have to understand, your goodness isn't what makes you valuable. Your boundaries are. Your kindness means nothing if it's not backed by the possibility of withdrawal. When people know you'll always forgive, They stop fearing your loss. And when they no longer fear losing you, your presence loses meaning. So stop trying to be everyone's healer. Stop trying to be the man who fixes every wound, softens every blow, explains every mood. The world doesn't need another self-sacrificing saint. It needs men who know how to say no with dignity, who can love without losing themselves, who can help without becoming dependent on being needed. Machiavelli said, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." In other words, when circumstances change, loyalty must be re-evaluated. The man who keeps promises that harm his future isn't virtuous, he's foolish. And in love, that means learning when to stop giving what is no longer deserved. Every good man must reach the moment when he looks in the mirror and says, "I'm done buying peace with pieces of myself." That's when transformation begins. Here's the truth. Machiavelli understood long before modern men forgot it. Goodness without power is not goodness. It's submission dressed in virtue. A man's kindness has meaning only when it's backed by strength. When you can be cruel but choose restraint. When you can walk away but choose to stay. When you can say no and still offer yes with intention. That's what makes your goodness powerful. The fact that it's controlled, not compulsive. Every man who's ever been betrayed, used or overlooked for his kindness has faced this choice. Stay naive or become wise. And wisdom begins the moment you stop confusing love with servitude. You were never meant to be endlessly understanding, endlessly patient, endlessly giving. You were meant to be balanced, firm and fair, strategic and sincere. The world doesn't respect men who worship goodness. It respects men who command it. Machiavelli warned that the man who is entirely good is destined to be destroyed among so many who are not. It wasn't a call to cruelty. It was a warning against blindness. He saw what happens when men think morality alone keeps them safe. It doesn't. In life, as in politics, the wolves don't spare the sheep because it's kind. They spare it only if they fear the shepherd. So if you want to be good like a sword, sharp, deliberate, and only drawn when necessary. Let your mercy be chosen, not assumed. Let your love be precious, not free. Let your patience be the gift of a strong man, not the apology of a weak one. Because the painful cost of being good to all women isn't just the loss of respect. It's the quiet death of your masculine spirit, the part of you that was meant to lead, to protect, to choose. Every time you give what hasn't been earned, you teach the world to devalue you. But every time you stand firm, you teach them to rise to meet your standard. So from this moment forward, stop trying to prove your goodness. Let your actions speak in silence. Be kind when it serves your purpose, not your guilt. Be generous to those who earn your loyalty. Be patient with those who respect your time. That's how you turn kindness into power, not through quantity, but through precision. Because in the end, it's not the man who gives everything who wins. It's the man who knows what's worth giving and when to stop. If this message woke something in you, don't let it fade when the screen goes dark. Hit that like button, share this truth with a brother who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more wisdom drawn from the minds of history's most dangerous thinkers. And remember this final truth. The world may never reward your goodness, but it will always respect your strength. Choose both, but never one at the expense of the other. This is Machiavelli's warning to every modern man. When you give your heart to everyone, you lose it forever. Now guard it, rule wisely, and never apologize for your strength.